Pokemon. Just hearing that word probably brings back a lot of memories you've had with Pokemon, whether you're a longtime fan like myself or someone who's lost interest in Pokemon over the years as you got older. No matter what though, whenever I talk to somebody and the topic of Pokemon is brought up, their eyes always light up and they tell me about their favorite Pokemon, their favorite card, or their favorite episode from the anime. That alone tells you that Pokemon really is something special. Pokemon really took the world by storm when it came out in the late 90s, and it's one of the few franchises that pretty much everyone has memories of from when they were a kid. The core mechanics of Pokemon are simple and very easy to understand for younger kids to get into especially. You have these cute or cool looking creatures that fight each other in a turn-based style, making the basics very simple for anybody to understand. You could go a step further and go into things like nature, EV training, and all that, but if you were to explain that to a casual Pokemon fan, they'd probably think you need a PhD just to understand what is going on, because it does get pretty overly complicated and involve a lot more math than it should for a children's role-playing game. Now, I was first introduced into Pokemon right around when Pokemania started taking over in the United States. I don't remember exactly when I first heard about Pokemon, but one of my earliest Pokemon memories was when my dad came home from work one day and had a surprise for myself and my two older sisters. He handed my oldest sister a pink Game Boy Color with a copy of Pokemon Red, my other sister got a green Game Boy Color and a copy of Pokemon Blue, and I still remember the excitement I felt in that moment as just a little kid. My dad reaches into the bag and all I can remember thinking about was, what is he going to give me? Pokemon Red version or Pokemon Blue version? My dad pulls his hand out of the bag and hands me something. I look down and to my surprise, it's Tetris. Okay, I think I still got this. No! I don't mean Tetris for the Game Boy or a Game Boy at all for that matter. I mean this weird little green handheld machine that only plays Tetris in black and white. I must have only been about 3 years old at the time this happened, and my dad didn't think I'd understand or even like Pokemon, and boy, looking at my channel today, he was wrong. And you know, looking back on it, if my dad thought I was too young to understand or like Pokemon, I don't know why he thought I would understand or like Tetris, when that's probably more complicated to get into than Pokemon as a 3-year-old. I mean, playing the game now, I still have no idea what I'm doing. If I wanted to play Pokemon at the time, I had to use one of my sister's Game Boys, but we would always watch the show together or beg our parents to buy us cards if we saw them in some type of store. We had no idea how to play, but we just liked getting holographic cards and seeing Pokemon recognized from the anime. These are the memories I cherish the most about Pokemon, back when I was a little kid and all me and my sisters cared about was Pokemon and when we would catch the next new episode. Eventually, my dad came home with a present for me this time. It was a transparent purple Game Boy Color, and more importantly, a copy of Pokemon Red, both of which I still have to this day. This instance alone single-handedly turned me into a Pokemaniac. I never really realized this as a kid, but looking back, I know my parents didn't exactly have the money to be spending on 3 Game Boys like that in a short amount of time. They had just bought their first house together, and my dad worked pretty much around the clock every single day, even on most weekends when I was a kid. Fast forward to today, over 20 years later, and I'm still a huge Pokemon fan. I'm probably even a bigger fan of the franchise now than I ever have been, and I can't exactly understand what keeps me so invested in the franchise. Is it the memorable music in every game? Sometimes I hear a Pokemon theme like the Azalea Town theme and it just takes me back to when I was a kid, playing slow version for the first time, running around the Johto region with my Typhlosion. My family and I had just moved around the time that Gold and Silver was the newest Pokemon game. I didn't really have many friends at the time, but I still had my Pokemon games to play. Or maybe it's the cards, something that's seen a huge resurgence lately, especially on YouTube. Now, I'm not a super avid collector of the Pokemon cards or anything like that, but I do like to keep my rare cards in a binder and occasionally buy some older cards if I come across a card that I really liked. I even remember spending $20 on a base set Charizard when I was about 13 in 2008, and I also have a base set Venusaur and a base set 2 Charizard that's in absolutely terrible condition. My best friend at the time, who moved across the country when we were in middle school, traded them to me. I think it's memories like this which makes the cards so valuable to people today. It's more about the memories and not the cards themselves. Most people who collected the cards never even really knew how to play the game, we all just loved it because it's Pokemon. Or maybe it's the anime. The original anime theme song is one of the most iconic songs ever, and whenever it comes on, everyone smiles and sings along. It's one of those songs that everyone knows the words to, and I still remember the first episode of the Pokemon anime I ever saw. It was the episode where Grimers and Mux were in the sewers and Ash had to go find the King Muck and stop him. My sisters and I would watch Pokemon together all the time, and the episode I remember the most as a kid was the episode where Ash meets this guy with a Sandshrew in Viridian Forest. I even had this silly Pokemon lunchbox as a kid with a screenshot from that episode of the anime on it, which I covered with any random sticker I would get my hands on, even if they weren't Pokemon related. It's crazy how when I look back on any point in my life, there's always some link to Pokemon somehow. When Generation 2 came out, Pokemon was still huge, but it started to see a little bit of a decline. Eventually, my oldest sister stopped liking Pokemon because she was entering middle school at that time. We also moved around this time, and I remember playing Pokemon Silver through the whole process. I started the 2nd grade shortly after we moved, and during that year, Pokemon Ruby and Pokemon Sapphire came out. I still vividly remember going to Target with my mom, my aunt, and my cousin, and seeing Pokemon Ruby on the shelf behind the glass. This was the first Pokemon game on the Game Boy Advance, and after seeing so many commercials for Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire and being as big of a Pokemon nerd as I was and still am, I remember begging my mom for it. My cousin begged his mom for it as well, and we both got Ruby versions since they didn't have Sapphire. I remember going home and immediately sitting on the couch in the living room loading up Pokemon Ruby for the very first time. Coming from the Game Boy Color and its lack of, well, colors, seeing Pokemon on the GBA was breathtaking as a kid. I still think that the 2D style of Pokemon on the Game Boy Advance is one of the best Pokemon styles ever, and the music. Oh, the music in Ruby and Sapphire. These games have some of the most iconic music out of any Pokemon game in the whole series, with the unique trumpets and the overall better sound quality that the Game Boy Advance offered. Everyone at my school was playing Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire when they came out. Well, mostly Ruby version, since not many kids had Sapphire for some reason. If you did have Sapphire version though at my school, you pretty much had a huge advantage in battling, since the quote-unquote meta at my elementary school at the time was just Groudons and Blaziken, since everyone also started with Torchic. Kyogre, or as we called it, Krogi since we couldn't read, would dominate anybody who had Ruby version. I was one of the few kids who had a link cable for the Game Boy Advance, a 4-way link cable even, so we'd always do double battles at recess. I would play a lot with the same friend who traded me that Venusaur card too, and to say that we were obsessed with Pokemon at this time would be an understatement. We even used the 4-way link cable to do that stupid Pokeblock minigame that probably nobody watching this video ever bothered to do with other people. Playing Pokemon with others like this is a big part of what I think makes Pokemon so special, as the creators have even said that the original Game Boy's link cable functionality was a huge influence on Pokemon as a whole. As the years went on after Ruby and Sapphire came out, Pokemon began to be less popular at my school and just less popular in general. Pokemon was still a huge franchise at this point, no doubt, but Pokemania was long gone. I'd eventually start middle school right before Diamond and Pearl came out, and by then I was one of the very few kids who still liked Pokemon at my school. You see, when you're in middle school, all most kids care about is being cool, and since Pokemon wasn't exactly seen as cool, many people gave it up or just forgot about it as they grew up. When Diamond and Pearl came out, I didn't have nearly as many people to play with as I did in the past, as nobody at school really played it anymore. Some kids would make fun of me for liking Pokemon, but I still had my best friend who liked Pokemon. We'd play Diamond and Pearl a ton, and I remember messing around in the underground bases playing Capture the Flag all the time. He moved the summer after Diamond and Pearl came out though, and after that I didn't really have anybody to play Pokemon with anymore. That is, until I discovered more about the internet. Now, even as a young kid, I spent a lot of time on the internet reading various Pokemon forums, but you see, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl were the first Pokemon games to have online functionality, something I dreamed about as a kid, so I could battle or trade with anyone at any time that I wanted. This allowed me to trade with people from all around the world, and it also meant that I could get event-only rare Pokemon just by downloading them at home, rather than begging my mom to take me to Toys R Us to wait for 2 hours in line just to get this stupid Mew in my leaf green version. I remember going on various Pokemon forums, discovering Cerebi, which I visited daily, and battling and trading with people all over the world that I met online. This allowed me to continue to connect with Pokemon fans even if I couldn't do that in real life anymore. This would expand later on in 4th generation and as well as the start of 5th generation, where I would discover that there were people on YouTube who would post videos about Pokemon. I found channels like Maryland, Magnitude, and Jwits at the time, all of which are people who inspired me to be a YouTuber and people I still follow even to this day. I would still get made fun of for liking Pokemon at school occasionally, but seeing people who were older than me on YouTube who still liked Pokemon made me feel better about it. I would take my DS with me everywhere then, as I had just recently discovered competitive battling and how it works, and even posted my own cringy OU battles on YouTube by pointing an old phone at my DS screen with no commentary. Pokemon offered an escape from reality, and since the games were all handheld, it meant I could take them with me anywhere. I could go on and on about my story with Pokemon and my history with the franchise, but I feel like that covered the most important bits. If we go farther into the Pokemon timeline, this takes us into Pokemon X and Y, which is what a lot of people would consider to be the start of modern Pokemon. I would argue that 5th generation could be considered the start of modern Pokemon as well, or be placed in the classic era depending how you look at it, but there's no denying that something about Pokemon changed after the 5th generation, and I can't quite put my finger on it. Pokemon X and Y was the first time the main series franchise dived into full 3D on the Nintendo 3DS, which was arguably a bigger change than the move from the original Game Boy to the Game Boy Advance. While the 3DS's graphics look like this, and looks even worse when blown up and put on YouTube as opposed to that small 3DS screen, it was still an amazing sight to see at the time. They came out during my first semester of college, and I remember running home from class just to play Pokemon X and Y and watch various streams and YouTube videos. I personally still really enjoyed X and Y, but was so confused as to why it had a lower count of newer Pokemon compared to older games, and why it barely had any catchable legendary Pokemon in the game. With Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire that came out a year later, it fixed some of the problems I had with Pokemon X and Y, and even added some new Mega Evolutions, which I thought was really cool. And although I think that Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are still great Pokemon games, out of all the remake Pokemon games, they stand out the most from the originals they're based off of to me. And then this takes us into Pokemon Sun and Moon, which in my opinion are by far the worst Pokemon games in the main series franchise, and it really isn't even close. I have a whole video on Sun and Moon and why I don't really like them that much, where I go more in depth and talk more about it, but basically it's because they have way too much of a focus on an uninteresting story, and the Alola region as a whole is significantly more linear and uninteresting than any other region I've explored prior to that. I know that I'm in the minority when I say that Generation 7 is my least favorite generation by far, and although I don't necessarily think it's a bad generation, it's the only generation where I got bored on my first playthrough of the game and don't really plan on replaying them anytime soon. This of course takes us into Pokemon Sword and Shield, one of the most polarizing games to date. Look, I'm not gonna beat around the bush here. Sword and Shield have their problems, but they are the most fun Pokemon games I've played in a long time. The story is whack, but I never really cared much about the story. To me, Pokemon was always about becoming a stronger trainer and defeating the champion, and Sword and Shield allows you to do that, at least better than Sun and Moon did. I could care less about having a good story like people praise Sun and Moon for, when in my opinion the story makes Sun and Moon even worse and more boring. Now while Sword and Shield are easy, and Pokemon in general became a lot easier since the release of Pokemon X and Y, I still really like Sword and Shield and think that both of the DLCs only make them better. I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, but playing through Sword and Shield for the first time felt fresher and a lot more exciting than any other of the recent Pokemon games released in the last few years. I've seen far less spoilers about Pokemon Sword and Shield compared to say Sun and Moon and X and Y, and even though that I am a Pokemon channel, I don't really focus on Sword and Shield that much. This meant that going into Sword and Shield there were a lot more surprises for me to find, and it felt like I was a little kid playing Pokemon again for the first time in a very long time. I'm not really sure how to end this or what I expect you guys to get out of this video, but I spent like 4 days writing this script and have gone through many different iterations of this script that I lost count. You see, even though the majority of the videos on my channel are about Pokemon, I never actually made a video that was just about Pokemon until now. There really isn't a game franchise that I've loved more than Pokemon in my entire life, and it's been with me for pretty much my whole life. I have no idea how long Pokemon will last or what the future of Pokemon holds, but I do know that Pokemon has been there for me through the rough times and through the good times. It helped me make friends, and more importantly, it helped me make some of the best memories of a childhood that I hope I never forget.